Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the VVA podcast. My name is Leila Oresme.
And I'm Cristina Tumino.
And today's episode is with a very special guest, Richard Abbot. And Richard, would you like to introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are yet?
My name is Richard Abbot, and I practice all day long doing things like numerology and tarot and psychic and mystical development and healing and things like this. And I've been doing that for all of my adult life, really.
Yes. So, and I know you wrote as well many books.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I've written 10, 11 books. Writing another one, always making notes for the next one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe we can talk about those at the end. We in our previous episode number 9, we talk about solitude, and we know that you associate, if I'm correct, you associate yourself with the tarot card, the Hermit, that has to do in some way with solitude. For those that don't know, the Hermit is represented by this old man walking alone and holding a lantern. So can you maybe elaborate about on the idea of solitude and maybe the journey of the Hermit?
Well, in the card, there's a number of things to focus on. You can either focus on the fact that the person in the card is probably an old man, or you could focus on the fact that the person in the card is alone, or you can focus on the fact that he's carrying a light. I mean, all those things are true, but to me, the important bit is, the two important bits are the fact that he's alone, not the fact that he's old, the fact that he's alone, and carrying a lantern. So to me, the path of the Hermit and the idea of solitude is that by withdrawing from noise and madness and the craziness of people and the craziness of the world, by withdrawing from all that, you actually get a chance to see and to hear the truth of things much more clearly. So example. So I was foolishly looking at Twitter when I had my lunch, a little bit of lunch about half an hour ago. And I was saying to myself what I always say when I foolishly look at Twitter, which is, these people are insane. Because the commentary which is taking place on Twitter, you can pick any topic you like, really. It is insane. It bears no relationship to any kind of view that I hold in any way, shape or form. So by looking at Twitter, by getting involved in the madness, I am dumber by doing it. I am more confused by doing it. I know less by doing it. By switching that off and being in some kind of solitude to myself, with my own thoughts, with my light, then I can actually then make sense of what is going on. And I would suggest that's not just me, that is something which we could all do.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
So how does one start the journey on it? How does it begin, and what can they expect from such a journey, and also maybe what they should avoid along the way?
Well, so in order to start the journey, if I may say that first, in order to start the journey, in order to do the journey seriously, you have to kind of give up on the idea, a very popular idea, of the wisdom of crowds. So a lot of people talk about, and particularly a lot of people that are online, will talk about the wisdom of crowds. So occasionally on Twitter, again, just to pick that example, you'll find somebody who will say, they'll have a lot of Twitter followers, and they'll have a problem or question in their life, and they'll say, okay, Twitter, tell me how to do this. And they'll get like 50, 100, 2,000 responses about how to do the thing that they've asked about. And they will assume that they have crowdsourced some wisdom, because crowds are wise and know stuff. The path of solitude, the path of the Hermit, says exactly the opposite. The path of the Hermit says crowds know nothing. Crowds herd together like sheep and they all go over the cliff together. They know, and what one person shouts loudly, that distorts the general atmosphere. So crowds know nothing, and you have to kind of be willing to work with that idea in order to bother with any sort of quest for solitude at all. The flip side to that is that if you reject the crowd, it doesn't have to be Twitter, it can be, you know, any group activity. If you reject the crowd and you say, well, these people don't know, this mass of people they don't know, who does know? Well, okay, I'll go my own way and see if I can find out. The risk there is that you become self-absorbed, because the risk there is that you then say, well, nobody else knows anything ever, and I'm the only one that knows all the things. And that's equally crazy and equally imbalanced. So it is a matter of balance between those two extremes, but it's a kind of balance that tends in the direction of saying the crowd ain't wise.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to someone who is used to being around maybe like a friendship group, and they always had a good sense of belonging, then maybe not used to being like the loner or the introvert? What would you say to them? Like, if they are so used to having good friends around them, that maybe help each other all the time, what would be the key to kind of invite them into this path?
Well, we should have good friends that we help and help us if we can. But that doesn't mean that we all have to think the same. It doesn't mean that we all have to see the world in the same way. In my view, if you've got a good friendship group, if it's a real friendship group, then they're not going to mind if you think X and they think Y. Then they're not going to mind that if they're a real friendship group. If it's a friendship group where they insist that you see the world like they do, well, you know, fair enough, but that's not much of a friendship group in my view, because then they're not really allowing for your uniqueness. The other thing I'd say there is actually, I don't think being part of a friendship group, or even a family for that matter, is all that enjoyable for everybody. Certainly some people like it, they appreciate it, they'd much rather be go along with the crowd, the group, the family, than they would go their own way. Some people certainly think like that, but by no means everybody. By no means everybody. I'm not the only one to have grown up involved in social groups and sometimes thinking, who are these people that I'm with? I'm not the only one to think that. I know I'm not the only one that thinks that. So I think there's many more people that are in friendship groups, families, you know, gatherings of some kind, and sit there. They're physically there, but they're not really there because they don't feel part of it. And people like that are already on the journey. They've already started the journey to essentially going within. That's essentially what the path of the hermit is about. Going within, going away from the noise and trying to find the signal. They've already begun that journey.
Yeah, and then when you go within, my understanding is that you start to find your own truth, or what interests you can get, like what are the things that you can get very interested in, and then from there you can confront yourself in the group and in with the crowds. And actually, it's not even about bringing out your uniqueness, but as well to grow, because it's a confrontation. Like, you have different kinds of points of view, and maybe your point of view can be, you have a point of view because you have done, I don't know, your research, or you have your own beliefs. And then the fact that there is somebody else that thinks differently might actually make you think in another way, or it leads you to something else that can be even completely different to your previous point of view and the one of another person. So it's growth. There is growth.
100%. And I'm not suggesting that we should reject other people entirely, or even at all. I'm just highlighting the fact that, for example, a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people, when they have conversations, okay, they're not really, say two people having a conversation, They're not really listening to each other. What's happening is, and you can see this, and maybe you've done it yourself. I've done it, certainly. Person A says something, and person B is waiting for person A to shut up so that person B can say what they are going to say anyway. And then person A shuts up and waits for person B to be quiet so that they can say whatever they were going to say anyway. And you can certainly see this online. You certainly see it online that people are not conversing. People are not responding to each other. They're saying what they were going to say anyway. And all of that, whenever that happens, okay, sometimes it happens because we're letting off steam. But whenever that happens, there's not much value going on there. And I would rather leave those kind of interactions and tune in internally to try and find out some truth.
Yeah, we were saying it's about developing the ears, like being able to listen. And maybe you can start by learning to listen like inside some way.
But also being willing to listen. I mean, it's not just the ability to do these things, it's the desire to do these things. The path of the hermit begins when it's very early stages. The path of the hermit begins when you realize the crowd is not wise. So it's not even a question, okay, well, what techniques do we need? You've begun it. The moment you look at a group and go, you're all mental, this is all crazy, you're all screaming about something and it's completely insane what you're talking about, and you clock that in your head, you've begun the path of the hermit, because you now know that the crowd is not the repository of knowledge. It's not. And that's hard, because our whole society actually is built on the idea that the crowd is the repository of knowledge, and it's just so not. Absolutely not. Some people refer to Google as the hive mind. The repository of everything that you would ever want to know about anything ever is on Google. And I can tell you for a fact, there could be nothing further from the truth. There is nothing further from the truth than that. Everything that you would ever want to know is absolutely not on Google. But if you believe it is, you're in the crowd. The moment you realize it's not, the moment you come across information and knowledge and it's not anywhere to be found on Google, you've found it somewhere else. And I don't mean a different search engine, I mean somewhere else entirely, then you've begun the path of the hermit. And it will continue for you for probably a long time.
Okay, so what about if someone says, that's fine, I'm ready, I can recognize that the crowd isn't wise, but how do I listen? How do I actually use my inner hearing? What is the process with that?
A big part of that is you have to slow your life down. I have been very impatient in my life, and for many years, I mean, I'm quite busy now, but for many years, I would spend my life running around left, right, and centre. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I would have driven 300 miles somewhere, or got a train, or got a flight somewhere, and the moment I'm in my house, I'm getting changed to go out again, like 2 seconds later. And there was, I never had a second to sit and think with myself. And actually, for a lot of people are like that. And it's very telling, because they don't want a second to sit and think to themselves. That's the thing. So you got to slow your life down. So it means boring things like you eat breakfast slowly and in silence. I don't mean in some kind of like, monastery kind of way. I just mean that you don't need to have the radio on and the telly on and be looking on your phone while you're eating breakfast, before you run out the door. All of that, you'll not hear any inner voice if you do any of that, because you're being stimulated, you're being overstimulated. Life has to slow down in order to stand a chance of doing this. There's lots of techniques, but the techniques are not the point. You can't do any of them if your life is not slower.
So if someone has like a very demanding job, let's say, and they're always working, what is the way for them? How can they do that?
They may have a demanding job, but
Mm.
it's a choice on their part, and it is a choice on their part because I've been this person. It's a choice on their part whether they do that job 24/7, and it doesn't matter what that job is. You don't have to do it 24/7. You are able, right? So here's a mobile phone, right? You are able to switch it off. Yeah, but we are able to switch it off for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. We're allowed to do that. Don't tell me that you're not. Don't tell me that you're not allowed to do it. You are allowed to do it. All this nonsense about, I've got to be connected 24/7. It's garbage. You're allowed to switch it off occasionally, and it's about giving yourself permission to switch it off and then using that time wisely. So if you've got a super demanding job and you've got to be at your desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, well, okay, fair enough. But maybe you can take 20 minutes. Maybe you can take 15 minutes. Once you've got up in the morning, had a shower, before you get ready, before you go out, without your phone, without your email, without anything, and just slow and breathe. And that's the beginning, because then you're listening to something else, not the constant stimulation. It's a beginning anyway.
Even going before going to sleep, like stop for at least half an hour and do. And I think the same advice you were giving now is valid for parents. Like their children, families, they're very busy. And I know that some families, they live more like a reactive life rather than being proactive and organizing themselves. But yeah, it's as well, I think it's very feasible, even if you're a super busy family.
It's very feasible, and actually it's extremely necessary, because I mean, what's the old saying? I'm going to get this saying wrong. You should meditate every day. You should meditate for 20 minutes every day, except if you're super busy, in which case you should meditate for an hour. Okay, so forget meditation, just like slowing and chilling for a second. When I was in my 20s, I cultivated the skill of being able to fall asleep standing up on the tube. Okay, because, and seriously, I could do it, and I would refresh myself. I could have 10 minutes and I would be absolutely refreshed afterwards. Why was I doing this? Because I was in the office at 8 in the morning, but I'd only got to my house at 4 o'clock that morning because I'd been in the club till 3 in the morning. So I know all about what leading a super demanding, reactive, intensely busy life is. I know what that's all about. And you can pause it sometimes. In fact, you should.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of organization, and getting that, as you said, 15 minutes, and not 15 minutes looking at the phone, but 15
It
minutes.
is a matter of organization, but really what I think it is, but precedes organization, it's a matter of will, actually, is what I think it is. Or even not even will. Maybe it's a matter of belief, because we are in this belief, and it's unconscious in most of us because it's pumped at us every second, that the crowd knows, the hive mind knows, the group knows. And so that's why I'm saying I'm going to unplug from that concept, because the group really doesn't know. The group really is not the repository of any kind of wisdom at all. No way, never, not ever. Got to unplug from that belief, and then you've begun.
Yeah. We were talking about solitude in our previous episode, and what we were saying is that also a lot of people, because they have become so dependent and almost addicted to constant stimulation, it's like they just don't know how to behave. It's like they just don't know what to do with themselves. When there's like a moment of silence, they feel uncomfortable. It makes them feel weird, or they might feel anxious or scared because they've never given the time to enter the inner world and just spend time with their own thoughts. So yeah, it just creates a lot of anxiety and tension in them.
It does, but in my experience, it's a problem for all sections of society. I mean, I know people who are 60, 65 years old, and so they should know better, who have a television on in the living room with Sky News, and Jeremy Vine on BBC Two on the radio in the kitchen, and then BBC One on in the garage. And these things are on all the time, so that when they walk from room to room, there's never any opportunity for them to hear their own thoughts. Never any opportunity. They move from Kay Burley's voice to Jeremy Vine's voice to somebody else's voice, and it's just yap, 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 yap all day long, from the moment they get up to the moment they go to bed. And they'll think that they're informed and wise and knowledgeable, and all they're doing is thinking other people's thoughts and parroting and repeating other people's thoughts. And they might be in the house all day long on their own, and they'll call it solitude. And it's nothing to do with solitude, because it's yap, yap, yap from other people's voices all the time.
Yeah, that's
so
it's definitely.
But what about, I'm thinking about these young people that they can study, for instance, only if they have music in the ears, or like they are complete all the time listening to music. I believe it's the same concept, right? Like,
it is the same thing. Yeah, it is. It absolutely is.
Part of me thinks that this is a big part of why a lot of people actually enjoy holiday, because when they go on holiday, they've taken out of their routine, and it's like no one really watches the news when they're on holiday, right? They just look at the views and just really spend time in the moment. That's usually the time when people turn off their phones and they don't really answer calls from work. Well, some people do still, but it breaks the pattern when they're actually kind of just in the moment, rather than just constantly listening to stuff from outside.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, a lot of it is to do with fear of missing out. If you take a path of solitude, path of the hermit, then, you might miss something. In my experience, you won't be missing anything. You won't be missing anything.
I think you actually miss a lot more when you don't take that path.
100%.
A lot more on who you really are.
But you don't know that you're missing it, because you've never done it, so you don't know what you're missing.
So tell us about the inner world. What do you understand by that term? What should people know about it? Because so a lot of people will say, so the phrase the inner world is used and misused. Some people will say that the inner world is the place where you have your private thoughts that you don't tell anybody. So the inner world is where you can pretend that maybe one day you'll retire from work and go and live in the south of France and be a painter. That's your inner world, some will say. That's not the inner world as I know it. The inner world as I know it, and this is very hard to describe, so it may sound completely crazy, but the inner world as I understand it is a demonstrable, objective place that is non-visible, non-material. In other words, when we have our eyes open, we are accessing the outer world. When we have our eyes closed, we are accessing the inner world. And one of the ways to think of this is that they are 50-50. It's not that the outer world is 95% of our experience and the inner world is 5% of our experience. 50% outside, 50% inside. And it's the place where all sorts of spiritual, mystical kind of experiences and insights can be accessed and can be learned. It's very hard to describe the idea of it. It's really something that has to be experienced. Really something that has to be tried and discovered for oneself, and then you know. The nearest thing to it, but it isn't really it. The nearest thing to it is what happens in your dreams. So in your dreams, you
can do all sorts of amazing, incredible, and magical things that you can't do when you've got your eyes open. And we've all had the sense that now and again you'll have a dream and it will be so real, it will feel so real that when you wake up, for a couple of minutes after you wake up, it's as if it really happened. And you're trying to continue your outer world life as if, you know, carrying on from that, because it was so real, it was so vivid. And we've all had that experience at some time in our lives. And that's the essence of what the inner world is.
So would you say, is this the place where, for example, a lot of saints talk about having visions and talking to angels and things like that? Are they saying that about the experiences they had in the inner world, or were the angels actually really physically here?
Oh, it would be in the inner world, without doubt.
Okay, that makes
But
sense.
it would be super real, just in the same way that a vivid dream would be super real.
So where is the line between this and imagination, or
Okay.
is imagination linked to the inner world?
It's linked, and we might also say, well, where's the line between this and delusion and total craziness? We might say too. Anything that would occur in the inner world, your inner world, would be real if it is not what you expect. And this is the crucial point. If you go into your inner world, and okay, there's a question there, how do you get into your inner world? But if you go into your inner world and you know, you are some magnificent hero or heroine, just like you wanted always to be, and you know, suddenly your hair is beautiful and it's not in your ordinary life, but suddenly in your dream it is, and you wear glasses in the outer world and suddenly you don't have to wear glasses in the inner world and everything's amazing and you're fantastic and all that kind of stuff. That's imagination. That's imagination. That's self-delusion. The inner world.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say the inner world is always unexpected.
Yeah, even the questions, I would say the answers you would like to receive, kind of the moment that you would like to receive an answer and that's what you get, maybe it's not actually the answer that you really needed to get. Maybe it's your imagination, like you kind of interfering with the real kind of knowledge.
It's hard to describe. It has to be experienced. Without the experience, it's maybe that what we're saying here doesn't make sense. It's the inner, any insights that you would come to, any information that you would gather, any ideas that you would get, answers that you would find in the inner world are not likely to be things that enable you to confirm your prejudices. So if you go into the inner world and you come out, so you hate Donald Trump and you go into the inner world and your inner world contact tells you, yeah, hate Donald Trump, that's the way forward. Well, you're not in your inner world. You're having a conversation with your own mind, and that's nothing to do with the inner world at all. And that's not because of who Donald Trump is or isn't. It's just that if you've gone in and just confirmed your prejudices and come out stronger in your preconceived ideas, that's not the inner world. That's not what it's about. It's about finding a new level of answer, either a different answer or a new level of answer, new level of understanding.
And I understand, if I'm correct, there is a link. Well, in my experience and your teachings, there is a strong link between the inner world and the outer world, if we want to call it outer, like the one that we experience with our body and our senses.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a link from one to the other and back again. We're talking about the inner world, but there are certain things that you have to do to fully access it to the degree that we're talking about. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you can take some time in solitude and life a little bit slower and less stimulation and less input from others and not just accept that the crowd knows everything, when you can let go of all of that, you're going into the inner world gently without any extravagant practices. You're going into the inner world because you're starting to think in a way that is different from the norm. And the moment that you're starting to think something that is different from the norm, you're on your journey into the inner world. And it's not just a matter of being rebellious or contrarian. It's a matter of saying, the crowd hasn't got it right. What is right? Okay, I don't know what's right. But then it kind of, when you're in solitude, it can kind of come to you. The answer can come to you in some way.
I remember once you told me this example a long time ago. You were saying, like, if in your head is too busy because, I don't know, you're thinking, oh, I need to do that this morning. I need to prepare that. I need to go to work. I need to organize this, or I'm going then out with friends. Oh, music is coming. Oh, news, I'm listening to it. So your head is so full that you cannot hear the voice, the wisdom that is coming from within telling you what to do. So that's why you need to slow down, to remove a bit of that noise, so then you can actually hear what is telling you to say. And that makes perfect sense to me.
Absolutely. So there's an argument to say that in order to really know what is going on in the world, in life, in the universe, and everything, your essential qualification is not 5 PhDs and an extensive catalogue of published works and super fame. That's not what you need in order to know what's really going on. And in fact, more likely, if you've got those things, you've got no clue what's going on in the world, actually. The people that have got a real clue of what's going on in the world are people that don't have any of those qualifications and who rely upon what we would call kind of ancestral wisdom, right? They don't know why XYZ is not true. They don't know why, but they know that it's not true. And it's not because they are thick and prejudiced and led by the nose by propaganda. It's because they sit to themselves and think about it on their own level, to themselves, against the crowd, and they just know what's what. So, and all that's, and everybody's got access to that, but we lose access to it when we are constantly filling up on a diet of information that is actually not information, it's just really propaganda.
I think this is also a way to actually connect with God and actually have that time where you can connect and sort of hear God's guidance. Or maybe, does that make sense? I think it's like when people take the time out for prayer, that's pretty much what they're doing. It's like they go into their inner world, and this is how they can actually access God. And God is the highest aspect of truth is basically God. So
the voice of guidance, God, if you like, the voice of guidance is always available, but we are not always available to it, right? So when we don't know what we need to do, it's because we have strayed away from the source of knowledge and truth. That's how it goes. The voice of guidance is always available. The tap is always on. It's that we walk away from the tap. We need to, and the only way we can get back to the tap and drink from the water is by rejecting the crowd and going into some situation which requires some degree of slow solitude. That's the path to it. The voice of guidance is always available. It is us that leave it, not it. It doesn't leave us. We leave it.
Yeah, and maybe we start by doing kind of self-work on that respect, because when we are in solitude, maybe we can start to understand more about who we are, what is it that doesn't work and what it works. And slowly we actually start to get closer, because we start to listen to that voice, and we get kind of naturally closer to the voice, and then we can get closer then to God and kind of gain a bit more wisdom.
And I feel like the guidance will tell us things about ourselves, things that we could never have known before.
Well, yeah, it will. The voice of guidance will tell you things about yourself that you wouldn't otherwise be able to know. And that is a good thing, but it's also part of the problem, because there's no doubt about it. Not everybody, but some people will have Sky News on in the living room and Jeremy Vine on in the kitchen and BBC on in the garage deliberately, so that they don't have to hear anything about themselves, so that they don't have to receive any guidance, because if they receive any guidance, they know it's going to tell them to do something they don't want to do. And I don't mean something bad, I mean something good, that they don't want to do it. The voice of guidance, which everybody would be able to access, it's different for everybody. It'll say a different something to you than it will to me, than it will to you. But it will, the common theme is that it will tell us things that enable us to go forward. If you don't want to go forward, listening to the voice of guidance is going to be a problem. And in fact, you're not going to want to do it. You're going to pull down the shutters, because you're going to be like, no, I'm fine. My life is, if you think my life is fine, right, it's everybody else that's the problem. I'm fine. I don't need to change. I don't need to learn anything. I don't need to adjust. I don't need to grow. I'm fine. Everybody else just needs to sort themselves out. Well, you can't hear the voice of guidance. You'll never hear it.
I actually had a conversation once with a person that was saying, because I was explaining that not everybody is willing to actually make their life better. Like, they're not willing. And this person was saying, no, that's not true. Everybody wants to. It's they don't know how to do it.
No.
I was trying to explain that it's not because if you don't know what to do, but you want to do it, you find a way. In a way or another, you find it. So, and of course you will make mistakes. And of course the things you need to do, maybe you will not like it at the beginning, because maybe you need to face somebody on something, or you need to put like another person, you need to keep that person away, or you actually need to act on things or make changes that at the beginning you don't really want to, but it's necessary to take on responsibility and move forward. And that was the point I was trying to make, that although it sounds almost crazy, and you say, what do you mean people don't want to? Of course, everybody wants to. And I was trying to explain that it's not really true that everybody wants to.
It's absolutely not true. I mean, maybe most do. Let's be generous and say maybe most do, but there's definitely some. And I'm not even judging, I'm just observing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. I mean, it's the same as healing. Okay, so in recent times, I have not performed any healing on anybody, but in pre-COVID times and a few years before that, I would use my late teachers' methods to try to physically help heal people, and I did that quite a bit for a period of time. And then it dawned on me that actually not everybody wants to be well. Not everybody wants to be healed. Now, I struggled with that for a little while. And then I was giving a talk on healing somewhere. And I thought, well, sod it, I'm going to say it. I don't care what the response is, I'm going to say it. Not everybody wants to be healed. Not everybody who's ill wants to be well. And I thought I was going to get absolutely demolished. And to my surprise, it was a group of healers up in Leeds. To my surprise, I got massive loads of nods of heads, because they all recognize that absolutely this is true. If the only thing you've got in your life is pain, and that's what defines you, it's what gets you up in the morning, it's what puts you to bed at night, it's what everything that you do in your life is based around. That's the only thing you've got. If somebody comes along and says, I can take this away from you, you are not going to let them take it away from you. Mm. If all you've got in your life is your Sky News, Jeremy Vine, BBC in the garage, if that is your life, if that's all you have, no judgment, but if that's all you have, and somebody comes along and says, no, change the channel, mate, turn it off, go in here, you ain't going to do it. You're not going to want to do it. It's understandable, really.
It's the same like when you have to lose weight, because like otherwise you're going to get really unwell or have diseases, diabetes or whatever. And the person says, no, I want to lose weight. And then you say, okay, perfect. So you need to exercise every day. and you need to like have a certain diet, and then they start to find excuses to have like a very, very fast way to get well. So that's not really wanting to get well. That's trying to have the easiest way to get well. And if it doesn't work, then fine, then you don't do it. And it's the same with parenting, although it sounds a bit harsh, but it can be as well when you want to parent. Sometimes some parents are more like, because it's hard. I'm not saying that, I mean, for everything, for even my life, for my changes, it's very hard. But
well, you're right. But again, we're back to this idea that which I think is at the heart of all this, which is that the crowd isn't wise, right? So a wisdom of the crowd, a thing which everybody obviously believes because it's obviously true, is that all healthcare workers are deeply committed to the health of their patients, and all teachers are absolutely committed to the well-being of their students. That is garbage. That is simply not true. Maybe most of them are, but all of them, forget it. No way. No way. And I know it to be true. I know it to be true for my own life. There are teachers, school teachers, they don't give a monkeys. They don't give a damn about their kids. They care about themselves. They care about themselves. Not all, but definitely some. And you can only get at that truth if you're prepared to walk away from the consensus. And then we say, well, what's the point of knowing that truth? Well, the point of knowing that truth is that if you've got kids and you're going to send them to school, and you can't just assume that all of the teachers are in it for altruistic purposes. There may be not. So we need to perhaps think about what teachers and what school and what approach is going to be, because they're not all in it for the good. And it's not suspicion, and it's not having a depressive view of the world. It's seeing truth, and the cliche, the truth sets you free.
Yeah. Although that might mean that you have to work harder on certain things, and it would be a bit more a difficult path, but then it would be the right path.
It might be a more difficult path. But since when did anything worthwhile come easily? If you're gonna get something that's worthwhile, it's gonna be difficult. It's bound to be. You can't not be.
100%. So how can we conclude then? What can we say about these and these? How do we, I don't know, anything else we want to say to conclude this?
Okay, so the danger of the path of solitude, the danger of the path of the hermit is selfishness and self-absorption. The danger of the path of the hermit is that the only person you ever reference or see or think about is yourself. Okay, and that's not what I'm advocating. That's not what this is about. The path of the hermit, or the path of solitude, is the path that you take if you really want to help people. If you really want to help people, because the way that you help people maximum is by meeting them with who they really are. If you meet the social image of somebody, and you try to deal with them on their social facade, their persona, then you're not really touching the person. You're not really connected with them, and you're not really helping them in any way. You've got to meet them as they truly are, as they deeply are, and you can only do that if you can see who they really are. And it's not to judge. So, for example, if you suspect or know that somebody that you care deeply about is taking a series of actions that are going to screw their life up, okay, that are going to make their life worse, and nobody else sees that but you, okay, society says, well, you might be wrong, so shut up. Who are you to say? But if you followed the path of solitude enough, and you can have tuned out of the noise and into the signal enough, then maybe you're able to say something to that person, which nobody else is going to say, which would be able to help them to turn their life around. That's what the path of solitude is about. It's not a path, ironically, it's not a path away from people, actually. It's a path towards people, but it's a path that's not a part of people. So what's the old saying? The path of solitude is to be in the world, but not of it.
Mm.
So it's not about selfishness. The path of solitude is not, you're all stupid, screw you, I'm going to go off into my own world. It's not that. That's definitely not what it is. And people that are sitting there with their VR goggles on, in the metaverse somewhere, dominating this metaverse while the room around them, corrodes into mold and fungus. Well, that's not the path of solitude. That's the path of selfishness. That's the path of self-indulgence, of fear. The path of solitude, the path of the hermit is that you, in order to help people, you actually have to walk away, disconnect from the noise of people so that you can hear the signal.
And it's not all the time. Yeah, it's not that you have to do that all the time and live on your own. It's just creating the time to do it. In some way, it makes me think of the lantern, the light. So it's like finding the light within, so then it can properly shine, so then you can actually help to bring light to other people in some way.
Well, so in the hermit card, the hermit carries a lantern, right? So the deep philosophical question is, who is the lantern for? Does he hold the lantern in order that he may see his own way? And I say he, but it could be she. Do they hold the lantern that they can see their own way, see where they are going? Or is the lantern there so that others can see where they are and find them?
I think it's both, actually.
I think it's both. I think it's both. But it's not just he's got a lantern and he's off like trying to find his way through things. Yes, he's doing that, but it's also, I'm over here, guys. I'm over here. If you really want to know, I'm over here.
Yeah.
And that takes us back to what I said at the start. The crowd is not the repository of knowledge. The crowd is the repository of ignorance and stupidity. What you want, if you really want to get advice from somebody that's not yourself, is seek out somebody that's not in the crowd. You want an outside voice, because they're the people that are going to be able to say things which the crowd will be impossible for the crowd to say. It'll be impossible even for the crowd to think.
Although you never know, like that's why you need to connect more with yourself, because there could be people out there that are against or go like in another kind of direction, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going in the right direction or completely in the right direction. Maybe for them is the right direction, but not for you. But that's why
correct. But the fact that they would be going in their own direction, not the masses' direction, is in my view would be very useful, because even if what they're doing is not for you, the fact that they've freed themselves gives them added insights that the others don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I think the goal is here is that the hermit is not saying come follow me, it's saying follow your soul. So it's not to say lead by my example, it's to say find your own self and lead by it, get led by that inner guidance, inner voice. Because if it was just like come follow me, then it would be basically it's going to create another crowd and the circle keep going. So it's about following your own soul.
100%. 100%. The hermit is doubly not interested in people following them, because then they won't be the hermit anymore and they won't have the peace and the solitude anymore. So yeah, 100%. The hermit is saying, disconnect from the crowd. Don't follow me. Follow yourself.
Yeah, it's amazing what can happen when you actually follow yourself and you start to shine your light. And then other people see that, and it's like kind of they want to do the same on themselves. So that's why you help as well, because it's like contagious in some way. So it
is, but to reiterate, it's not that if you go on the path of the hermit and you go on the path of solitude, you're not really doing it for you. I mean, there will be obviously some selfish motivation for it, but you're not really doing it for you. You're doing it for others. That's really why you're doing it. That's the reason for it. So it's not about, and it can't be. It won't work. It's not about self-absorption. You have to avoid that.
Okay, so why don't we wrap up here? And Richard, how can people find you? What maybe books do you have to recommend? Maybe on this topic, what is the best thing for people to go to from here?
Okay, so the website is www.thehermitage.org.uk. Lots of things happening there in the coming months. Lots of things already there. Lots more things will be happening. Check that out. You can get my books there as well. Most recent book is called Soul Strong. Quite a thick book, 500 odd, 600 odd pages. So it is quite a lot. But it's broken down into very short chapters. So it is ideal for people who want to go on a path of self-examination and self-discovery over a long period of time. That's really what it's for. So that would be where people could start or take a look at.
We'll put all the information anyway in the description below so they can find it. Okay.
All right.
Thank you
Amazing.
very
Thank
much.
you so much.
It was a pleasure and an honor to have you as our special guest.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope
All right.
everybody enjoyed the episode and learned something new.
And we will see you in the next episode.
Yes. Okay. Bye-bye.